Gladstone Fair Parade. Today is Friday, August 7th, 1992. Thanks for joining us. Starting out the parade, we have an RCMP car driven by Constable Frank Cuthbert. Following him are two horses with flags by Pat Field and Sandy Narada. Then we have a RCMP van driven by Sergeant Bruce McIntosh, donated by the RCMP Veterans Association. Here's a float put in by Joe's TV and Radio, driven by Roy Morrison. Little celebration of Canada's 125th birthday. Here comes Mr. Happy Rock. He looks pretty happy too. Of the truck. Here's a float put in by the Austin Credit Union. Inside the car we see Faye Scott and Kathy Fair. Here's a float put in by the Co-op, driven by Kurt Gloa. On the float we see Doreen McCrae at the piano. On strings are Walter Neufeld and Ken McCaskill. Here's a float put in by the Gladstone Pool. You see Lori, Donna, Vicky, Diane. Inside is Jennifer. Here's the ambulance driver, Joy Pritchett Sheridan. The Gladstone Masonic Lodge, number 11. On the float, we have George Edworth, Henry Arthur, Charlie Blair, Hans Anderson, Jack Oliver, Homer Fair, and driver Ray Benson. Here we have some wagons. Sorensen ponies that was. Here comes another wagon with 4 horses, a couple men on board. This is Bradley's mini draft. Next we have a covered wagon with a couple horses pulling it. This is the McCurries from Plymouth, Manitoba. Here we have Jake Clausen riding his brown horse. And in the green covered wagon we see Richard and Susan Moffat with a team of mules, and they are from Arden. Here we see a couple ponies, Roberta Foxon on board. And on these ponies, we have Alicia and Jennifer Parrott and April Smith, followed by Mom Deanna Parrott. On here comes another little horses pulling a cart. This is Hesselwood's Pony Ride Team. Driver is Ed Hesselwood. And you can catch these guys at Eva's Mini Ranch. Following them is young Kevin Medvid with a mule. Looks like there's a little break in the parade here. It's not over yet, folks. Here comes Eva Hesselwood with her goat. Yeah, the other half of the mini ranch. Here's a couple ponies pulling on a buggy, followed by yet another one with a little horse pulling it. Here we have the Royal Canadian Legion number 110 float. Inside the car we see Stuart Milne and Mrs. Ella Kinley. Looks like Old MacDonald's farm. Here we have another celebration of Canada's 125th birthday, put in by the town of Gladstone. Inside we see Lauren Kennedy, Vincent Hooper. Here's a truck by the Westburn Weed District, driven by Robert McIver. Here's some machinery put in by the Third Crossing Agricultural Museum. We have Barry Gilman, followed by Cliff Brooks. And on this one we have Jeff Mowat. Here's a newer piece of machinery. It's put in by the Manitoba Power Commission. It says farm electrification. Here we see a truck for the Reform Party of Canada. Driver Gary Henderson. It says building the new Canada. Here's a float put in by the Third Crossing Manor. You see the residents inside. Driver Wayne Wright, who's a faithful volunteer. Here's the Bank of Montreal float, driven by Janet Breeden. Here's the Gladstone Westburn Fire Department truck. Pretty clean. Followed by the fire department response vehicle. There's a little Jeep with some music by Radio Shack. Here's the Happy Rock Children's Center float. Some of the kids on the ride are Courtney and Kelly Buchanan, Brittany Hopkins, Eric and Lisa Discower, Bradley Anderson, driven by Linda Olson. The Old Blacksmith Shop by M&B Auto and Welding. This is a float put in by the museum, driven by Harold Hewson. A whale of a tale, it says. This is a float put in by the Elks and Royal Purple. Some members on board are Leslie Bowden, Ed Stroder, Kevin Cork, Curtis Cork, Sarah Stroder, and Stephen Mowat. And that brings us to the end of the annual Gladstone Summer Parade for 1992. Thanks for joining us.